Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our August meetup with Data and the Greater Good. I'm Elaine Gamble. I'm the community leader for Data and the Greater Good, and our focus as a community is the use of data in mission-driven organizations, the use of data to help humanity, whether it is the arts, social justice, education, volunteerism, and a number of other areas. Organizations come and talk to us about how they use data and how it advances their vision. And we're really honored to have with us tonight Pencils of Promise, a global organization that builds schools to provide education and increase literacy rates. Its mission is to ensure every child has access to a quality education. Pencils of Promise fulfills its mission through long-lasting and collaborative relationships with local communities, along with building schools. Pencils of Promise provides teacher training to ensure the school's long-term success. We're honored to have with us tonight Dr. Christopher Stanfill, Senior Director of Learning and Evaluation at Pencils of Promise in New York. In his role, he oversees all data, information, and research-related activities throughout the organization and leads a team of more than 20 people in New York, Ghana, Guatemala, and Laos. Dr. Stanfill and his team are responsible for producing all impact reporting at Pencils of Promise and work to ensure the results are presented transparently and thoughtfully for both internal and external audiences. Dr. Stanfill is an international thought leader in the area of international development, and prior to his current role at Pencils of Promise, he had a career dedicated to improving access to education and health services for people with disabilities living in rural areas or less resource settings. He received his PhD from the University of Texas at Austin. Before we go into Dr. Stanfill's talk, I want to acknowledge Bill Prickett, who is coordinating this virtual experience and video recording the talk. Bill, thank you very much for that. We really appreciate that. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stanfill. It's an honor to have you with us. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Elaine, and thank you, Bill, for all of the tech support you've provided, not only in the build-up, but then in this moment that we're having tonight together. I'm sharing my screen now to kind of kick off some further kind of context of myself. So as Elaine explained, I've been at Pencils of Promise. I oversee all data, but my path to this role is a little bit more interesting and cumbersome. I have a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in kinesiology, which has really nothing to do with global education. But the long and short of it is that I am passionate about data and using data to tell stories and using data to create positive action. So that career started off in the world of disability. It went into prosthetics. It went into lab research at the University of Texas, and eventually took me to rural areas of Laos, where I worked on wheelchair distribution and provision of access. So I find myself here at Pencils of Promise not as an expert in education, but as a self-proclaimed advocate for data and wanting to use data in ways that can inform our teams to make better decisions and improve the cycle of our work. So with that, I want to play a short clip to provide some more context and introduction to our work.
Most days start the same. The heroes rise, just like the rest of us. It's just another day. Another day that life chose you. Look around. This world was made of human hands, of minds open wide, of those who dared to dream.
I have a dream that all men are created equal.
The right to learning should be given to every child.
We do not need magic to transform our world. We carry all the power we need inside ourselves already. We have the power to imagine better.
Do you remember what it was like to imagine? Imagine a world where every child has access to a quality education, a pencil, a promise, a school, a dream. It's just another day that life chose you.
So as Elaine mentioned in our purpose of what Pencils Are Promise does, we build schools. That's where we started out. We built our first school almost 12 years ago to the day. And we've now built more than 520 schools across 4 different countries. We have current operations right now in Laos, Ghana, and Guatemala. Everything started in Laos, eventually scaled to Nicaragua for a short time. And then those operations were transferred to Guatemala and then moved into Ghana. But we do far more than school builds, and what we're trying to really focus on as an organization in the last 3 years and moving forward is what we provide outside of the infrastructure. The bread and butter of our work is teacher support. We believe in creating a more literate population through improving the quality of education inside the classroom, and doing that through providing teachers with workshops multiple times throughout the school year, and then one-on-one coaching sessions to reinforce skills taught at workshops throughout the school year. So it's a very personalized program to where each teacher in the program is receiving one-on-one professional development from Pencils of Promise employees. Our staff members in Ghana, Guatemala, and Laos are mainly historical teachers, are passionate about education, have experience in the classroom, and are there to provide the actual skills and motivation and support to all these public school teachers across these 3 different countries. We are a full-scale implementing organization, meaning that we don't contract out any of our provided services. So it's all of Pencils of Promise employees in each of the 3 countries that are providing the teacher support, that are designing the workshops, that are designing the curriculum, and providing support to those public primary school teachers. We also provide a water sanitation and hygiene program that promotes more school days, more days in the classroom, and a safer environment. And a good way to kind of put that in perspective is a lot of the schools and communities and where we work, there are not toilets, there are not hand washing stations, there is no place for safe hygiene at school. So in the cases of needing to use the restroom, some children, if a bathroom is not available, will have to go home. We also provide menstrual hygiene management education in Ghana. We're scaling that into Guatemala and eventually Laos to promote a safe and healthy place for girls to be at school at all times, providing private restrooms where all children can feel safe and private and go into the restroom. So it's a holistic model where all of these things work together in infrastructure, better teachers in the classroom, and creating safe and healthy learning environments. So learning and evaluation of Pencils of Promise comes into it in wanting to collect a lot of data, analyze that data, share these results out, and then with the deliver of these results, the acting team can then adapt and improve their program. So at Pencils of Promise, we have 2 very distinct pillars of our work. The programs, all the things that I just talked about, and then the fundraising, right? So as a nonprofit, we have to raise money in order to do the work that we're wanting to do in these 3 countries. So learning and evaluation provides services for both of those entities. We collect the data in country on school builds, on teacher support, on WASH programs, analyze that data, share out results so those programs and those programmatic team members can adapt and improve the programs. We also work with our marketing team, and we also work with donor analytics and what kind of email marketing behaviors, what kind of interactions with our website, what kind of social media indicators are driving evidence to say that we can reach a broader network of individuals, or if we find that a certain campaign has a larger monetary drive, really focus on that and improve it. So learning evaluation serves as an entity across the organization that provides analytical services, interpretation, and ways for teams to adapt. So from the impact and programmatic side of things, we collect both qualitative and quantitative results. We really look at the qualitative results to inform immediate needs of programs. So through interviews and feedback from teachers, what are they liking? What are they not liking? How can we really kind of make those quick adaptations? From the quantitative side of things, especially in education, it takes time. You're not going to see a lot of dramatic changes in literacy at a primary school level in one school year. So we've launched a longitudinal study where we are tracking the same cohort of students over the course of multiple school years. So then we can tell a more comprehensive story about how a student in the teacher support classroom is performing compared to a student in the same public education system, but not in a Pencils of Promise teacher support classroom. So with our three primary components from the programmatic side, and the vast majority of this conversation tonight will focus on our programs. There's only enough time to talk about all the work and which data we collect. And so we're going to focus on programs only, but I'd be happy to answer any questions around the analytics of monetary and marketing. But with Build, Teacher Support, and WASH, we have very specific things that we collect to not only produce outputs, but then to really show some correlations of what's changing over time. So especially within teacher support, our direct point of contact is the teachers. So observing teachers and seeing how they're adhering to our work. And then the indirect effect of our work being student literacy. So we're not actually working directly with the students. We're wanting to improve teachers to then improve student learning. So we do a student literacy test, and that's what I alluded to before in that longitudinal study, and where we're administering a literacy test every year, the early grade reading assessment, to the same cohort of students over multiple school years to show that longitudinal change. So for data collection at POP, we really, from the very beginning, before my time, 2-3 years in the organization, we've been seen as an organization, a nonprofit that really pushes the boundaries on data and technology. So I want to walk through how data collection from a school build side works very specifically. So all of our systems are very integrated. All data in country is collected on offline tablet forms via Formula. Formula is an app. If you're not familiar with it, I would highly recommend looking into it. You can build forms very easily. These forms then work offline. And then once you are synced to an internet connection, that data is updated to whatever integration. So our integration is Salesforce. We use Salesforce very robustly throughout the organization, both on a revenue side and then a program and impact tracking side. So we've been showcased many times at Salesforce in our use of the platform in very innovative ways. Again, we use it in very standard ways, but then we've also built our own application within Salesforce that customizes the way in which we look at our programmatic and impact data. And then we use that data in Salesforce that's very robust and very, very useful, but not always very visually appealing to look at, to then turn it into Tableau visualizations. And so all of these three tools are integrated with one another. So the data is all coming from the same source, but it's being filtered and fed through different entities to make it appropriate for the right audience. So for a needs assessment for a school build, a government official, a community member reaches out to us and say, I would like a school build. Our team goes out and does a needs assessment. And we go out and collect information on the community, school, the individual's name, the build number, the classroom, all these different components. And all of this feeds into a web of data management. So once that data is collected offline and the individual comes back online, it's automatically synced and creates a school record. So this is an example of the actual school record that we have within our Salesforce platform. And all of these fields are and all of these kind of open components that you see listed here are things that will be filled out on the needs assessment. So once they're filled out on the tablet, they're automatically updated and populated inside this form. And then all of our different fields talk to one another. And so this is our massive, complicated web of programmatic and our customized impact app inside Salesforce. But it really is a great representation of how all of the different components of our data and information speak to one another, and how there are different components of rolling up data so everything can be found very easily. So I often tell people who are new to the organization and new to Salesforce to kind of click around on Salesforce like Wikipedia, because everything's kind of interconnected in some way, and it'll lead you to a new component or a new field or a new object that will teach you something new about the organization. So what do you do in terms of analytics? And so with builds in specific, so for each calendar year, which is also our fiscal year, as each needs assessment goes out and that needs assessment comes in, is what that looks like to us is a proposed build. And so the team goes out and does the needs assessment, and we see that information coming in. It's like, all right, Ghana wants to build a school. So we look through that and we look at financials. I blocked out some of the financial information here, but this is how we do analytics from an organizational standpoint about budgeting, and then how we're staying on track for approved budgets from our board of directors. So this happens, again, very automatically. As a needs assessment is done, a new build record is created, and it is tied to all the different web of information, whether it be country, community name. There are often multiple schools built in one community. So it's a massive amount of information that can seem very overwhelming, but it's very, very interconnected at the end. Getting aside from builds, and I want to talk a little bit about teacher performance and teacher observations, given how we look at the analytics of our teacher support program. And same with builds, teacher observations are conducted on those tablets through forms that are fed into Salesforce pages that look just much like the build record I showed. And then those data can be then fed into dashboards like this that can actually visually show us how our teachers are doing. So as you see the different colored columns, the 4 on the left and the 4 on the right. The 4 on the left are teachers in schools not receiving Pencils of Promise teacher support. The 4 columns on the right are teachers in schools that are receiving the program. So we collect teacher observations 4 times throughout the school year. And then this is just a very quick visual way to see that our teachers that are enrolled in our program are performing better, that our program is working. So this is a very output-driven way to look at our data, and then we can take it a step further and do some more advanced statistical analyses on these kind of data. So in addition to the way we collect data, something that I'm very passionate about, as I said, is storytelling and making sure that we're communicating our results effectively. And prior to my coming to Pencils of Promise, we really relied on 2 main channels, annual reports and quarterly reporting. I despise annual reports of all kinds. I don't find them useful personally. From a data perspective, they don't really tell a lot of nuanced stories, and there's too much information to pack into an annual report. And so what I wanted to do is try to create a way where we could tell more stories in a broader sense. So talk about the advanced regressions that we're running on student literacy data, but then also talk about teacher stories and how teachers are experiencing our work firsthand. So we do that through a combination of internal and external ways. And it all begins with in-country teams collecting the data and sharing those results internally and having internal conversations about what those results mean. Everyone needs to be on the same page about what results mean from a data collection standpoint, and then an interpretation side of, all right, how can we use this data to actually improve? And it all comes from the same source. So everyone's looking at the same thing. All that information is collected on these tablets, is going into Salesforce, but it's really about the dialogue of, here's some straightforward analytics that we're going to produce to you, but what does it mean that this cohort of teachers in this specific region of Ghana are maybe performing worse than a cohort of teachers in another region? Is there some kind of environmental disaster that happened there? Is there some kind of government unrest? There's some deeper context and stories to always be told about, what our results mean, but it's always coming from the same place. And we use that to then adapt our programs, even adapt our evaluations if we find holes in evaluations, information that we're not collecting, adequately or appropriately, and then, make sure to share that across all teams. And then we produce that into high-level results and outputs, building 525 plus schools, impacting more than 100,000 students, that stuff that we produce on our website. And then we take it into a more in-depth and more attractive way into visualization through Tableau. And so this is our POP overview. We produce all of this stuff on public Tableau pages. Again, high-level outputs, but it can get more nuanced and more in-depth. And so this is an example of our teacher observation performance in Laos. So every teacher observation looks a little bit different in every country. But this is a Tableau visualization of the Salesforce dashboard that I showed a couple slides ago. So a way to kind of share this out and create it in a more accessible and more appealing way for donors, for broader audiences, for people in this group right now who are attracted by data and are constantly thinking of ways to present data in different ways. So we're always wanting to reach the broadest audience as possible. And we also visualize our student literacy outputs in our regressions. We produce these small kind of summarized, visualized tabs, but then we also produce very lengthy, robust regression reports that show all of the data codes that we're using and all the way that we're, making comparisons to different covariates within our analyses. So we build our evaluations in a way in which we can reach an academic audience and that we can kind of compete and compel people in the sector, but then also maybe folks that aren't that aware with education and can still be entranced by the way we present data and visualize it and show that we're actually making a difference. And all of this comes to stories. And again, with getting away from the quarterly reports, bringing more life and energy to our data through transparency talks. So this is a blog series on our website. If you go to our work on the main website, pencilsarepromised.org, you will find a transparency tab that will take you right here. And there'll be all the different articles in the world. They're usually always about 3 to 5 minute reads that cover everything, that talk a lot about how we're responding during times of COVID, that talk a lot about student literacy results, that talk a lot about the history and the progress that we've made over time, that talk about the work that we're doing in girls empowerment, that talk about the work that we're doing in menstrual hygiene management. So it covers a breadth of area where we can constantly be sharing out our work in a very consistent and an accessible platform that, again, the ultimate goal, reaching a broad audience. So it's all about being transparent, comprehensive, efficient, but primarily impactful. So it's important that all of us stay on the same page. I would say this if all of my team members were on the line with me, but prior to my coming on, there was a massive breakdown in communication between results sharing and program teams. But I can say now that we are, in fact, using data to make decisions. Every piece of data that we use is making decisions, which from a data side of things, and everyone can probably agree with me in this meeting, is that's the ultimate goal, is that everyone is actually using it to make a decision. And then we're also informing our donors, informing our network of supporters to show people what we're doing, how we're doing it, and wanting to advance our involvement in the community of evaluation. We are a nonprofit known for impactful stories, a great brand, and Justin Bieber was once tied to us in a heavy way. We have some celebrity weight, but my job is getting us in the right conversations and the right circles of scope to where we can become and advance ourselves as a leader in data and evaluation. And through that, ultimately expanding our network and reach, and accomplishing that in this very moment. With very thankful for Elaine reaching out to me, several weeks ago and inviting me to be a part of this, and I'll be looking forward to joining these meetups and these groups, both virtually and then hopefully, fingers crossed, when the time comes where they can all be in person once again. So thank you so much for your time, and hopefully you've been enjoying a bite to eat and your choice of drink during the dinner hour here. But be happy to take any questions that you have.
So thank you very much for that very informative talk, inspiring the work that you're doing. And if you have a question, you can type it into the chat and I will call on you to share your question. I'm happy to share it for you, whatever your preference is. So I have the first question. How is it different building a school in the countries that you mentioned? Because they're in different parts of the world, Ghana, Guatemala, and Laos. And so what are some of the similarities and differences in these different countries in building a school? What have you learned about how it varies by geography regarding your work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's first and foremost important to realize that the seed is planted all in the same way. We partner with local governments and we partner with communities. We do not own schools and we do not pay teachers. And so we work exclusively in public primary education systems that are public. And so it starts with strong partnerships. So that exists across all three countries, is that we have very strong partnerships with ministries of education and community partners. In terms of what the actual school build process looks like, it differs widely based on season, right? So I'll take Laos, for example. The rainy season is from late May to early September. So school builds do not happen in that span of time because the infrastructure of roads are too bad to get, trucks and delivery of materials in certain places. And so the actual school builds have to happen within the dry season. We've also found that schools in Guatemala cost more, both in labor and materials. And so from an organizational and budgeting standpoint, and wanting to see our scale and how fast we're growing in different places and make sure that it's equitable, that takes some closer attention to actual costs, and especially in existing COVID-19 world and post-COVID-19 world, a lot of that will likely kind of adjust a bit. And then third, I'll say that school builds look physically different everywhere in that it's not always a full school. So we build everything from, for example, in Ghana, there will be an entire school happening in an informal structure. So say either underneath a tree or underneath like a homemade wood structure that has shelter, but not necessarily safe footing. And so we'll go in and build a full school. In other cases, there will be a 3-classroom school that's overcrowded. And so what we do is we refurbish the existing school and then we build 3 additional classrooms. So then there are 6 classrooms. Sometimes we build 2 classrooms. So it's purely based on that needs assessment that I talked about, and in identifying what the actual needs are. We understand it's not a one size fits all, and we customize to community needs, to government partnership desires, and making sure that everyone's on the same page.
Okay, great. So we have a question from Owen Farsi. Owen, did you want to share your question?
Hi there. I've been staying off video because I'm cooking dinner right now, but I was just hoping you could share a little bit more about how you're generating student assessments, what kind of indicators of learning you're looking for, and to what degree local educators and local policies are incorporated into that design process.
Yeah, that's a great question, Owen. I hope you're cooking something delicious. We look at literacy from the student assessment point. And so with that, our key performance indicators are passage, reading, comprehension. So, looking at those as the building blocks of becoming literate by the end of primary school. If you are reading fluent with comprehension, that is the definition of literacy in many ways. Our assessment is not a component of national government assessment. So rather, in an example, all of the schools and school districts and entities and ministries and local governments that we work with have their own student testing system for progression, for graduation, whatever that is. Our literacy assessment is purely out of an evaluation of our own work and our own effect on the schools and on the students. And then we share those results out with school leaders, with district leaders, with ministries. But it's not a component of our work and our tests and our assessment are not a component of any effect on a child's progression through school. That is a decision up to the Ministry of Education in each country, and but our information is widely shared. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but I'm happy to delve into more.
Thank you. And we have a question from Josephine about local community meetings. Josephine, are you there?
I just unmuted. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, here we are. So let's see. I wrote, thank you so much. This is very interesting. How are the local community meetings that you hold regularly structured? How are they structured? And how do you involve parents in what specific ways that align the teachers and the parents? And then you mentioned that, the limitations of quarterly reports and annual reports. And so my question is, how do you identify compelling and representative stories?
That's a great question. I feel like we should have a full another separate conversation about those two items. I'll start with the latter. How I identify my graduate advisor dragged me through the mud throughout my tenure with her in telling compelling stories with data. And from the beginning, I never knew what that meant. And she kept on saying, anytime she'd read any work of mine, she'd say, "You need it. This doesn't tell a story." And I don't know what to do. You're just throwing my hands up. So I don't know if I can actually put it into words. It's more about something when you're in the certain seat, as I am in the seat I am within the organization. I feel like I have a strong enough grasp of the community of supporters and that demographic, and the demographic that I want to reach, and then helping my team draft their reports in a way that reaches those individuals. So our data analyst is a highly skilled statistician, and he writes like a statistician. I would say that if he was on the call right now, but I'm constantly pushing him, as my advisor once pushed me, to use clear language. Don't become too cumbersome in the definitions you use. There's a way to always push people's curiosity, but not to overwhelm an audience with jargon that could become unappealing, right? So wanting to find ways where new terms, new concepts are being introduced, but in a very creative and accessible way. I'm sure everyone on this call has read many things by Oliver Sacks, Dr. Oliver Sacks, and in my opinion, he's one of the best scientific storytellers of all time. So if you haven't read any of Dr. Sacks' things, that's what I'm talking about when I talk about storytelling through data and research. To your first question on community meetings, it happens in different capacities. From the school build standpoint, there's a very kind of formal structure and kind of building this quorum, different, the parents are always involved, the community leaders, in context of Ghana, village chiefs, government officials, we have these qualifications of making sure that everyone's in the same room at the same time. Other than the build side of things. We have community engagement teams that maintain relationships with parent-teacher associations. They're called different things in each country. There are very formalized structures in Guatemala. Guatemala, I've learned, is a very bureaucratic country. There's so many levels of oversight, and from parents to community leaders to district leaders, it's cumbersome, but it's also helpful to make sure that everyone's informed. We're in the time of COVID, we're wanting to kind of push the boundaries and get more into the communities, because remote learning is going to become more of a thing. We were already on that path before COVID, but this has accelerated it in a very new way, even in the remote areas that we're working. And so we're finding ways to become more and more engaged with communities, reinforce reading at home, reinforce hygiene practices at home, doing WhatsApp mass text messages, we partnered with the government to do radio messaging in Ghana to talk about our work, to talk about reading strategies, to talk about hygiene. So I would say that the community's always been involved, but we're wanting to involve them more. We want to get our work outside of the boundaries of the school, more ingrained into the behavior of everyday life of communities.
Thank you.
Thank you, CJ.
Yep.
And we have a question from Maura. Maura, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. So my question is, I'm really interested in the storytelling aspect that you've been talking about. And traditionally, storytelling has sort of a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I'm curious, in your opinion, whether storytelling through data has a similar pattern or sort of format.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I think the way that I always try to think about conveying our results and telling stories, and I'll speak to the more like heavily analytical side to talk about like the way we communicate our regression results. Is what I always want to convey is, here's why we do this. Here's what we did. Here are the results. And then this is what it means to us. And then this is how we're acting on it. So the quote unquote end to the story is an open end, because it's an ongoing thing. And so it's kind of like I'd say every story we tell with data is a stay tuned, almost like a cliffhanger. Here are some conclusive things that we found, either statistically or through interpretation of causal inference. But at the same point, we use this to adapt, to learn, to improve, and stay tuned, because we'll do something similar in the next year.
Okay, thank you. And Shanti.
Hi. Thank you for the interesting presentation. I'm curious to know more about the teacher support that the Pencil for Promise is doing. So you do need assessment for a building school. I'm wondering whether you also do like need assessment with regard to the teacher support, like whether you, for example, whether you do any need assessment for teacher support, and also whether you do whether you are applying a similar approach on this teacher support across all the 4 countries that you're in, or whether you do any customization in the approach that you do support for this teacher. So yeah, it will be great to know more about that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. I'll start with the latter again, is how my mind typically works. So the core structure of the teacher support program is workshops and coaching sessions. So bringing all teachers together in one common place where activities are presented, skills are presented, and practice group work. That quintessential teacher workshop, if anyone's here an educator, that you could really relate to. After the workshop, teachers go back, and then coaching sessions happen, usually about twice per month. So our staff members will go out and reinforce those coaching sessions. The number of workshops and the frequency of coaching sessions differs. Also, the content of coaching sessions differs based on the results that we're tabulating and the decisions we're making. So the example I always like to use is Guatemala, and their coaching session used to exist of 3 primary components. Through end of the year teacher interviews, it was found very conclusively that all teachers did not like one of those components. And so we took one of the components out. We also learned that the teachers felt like they weren't giving enough time to master the skills. And so for the next school year, we reduced the number of skills presented. And so we're really responding to what the teachers are telling us and adapting the program and customizing in each way. So while the kind of the manual, the instructions might start off the same, each one goes off in its own path to kind of meet the needs of each teacher, of each community. 2 needs assessment. I love that you bring that up because it's something that we do and we do very well, and it sets us up for success. In that, historically we found, pushing the teacher support program onto school without asking them does not go well. It creates a lot of resistance. All teachers around the world are overworked and underpaid, and pushing a professional development opportunity on them where someone from another nonprofit is going to come in and tell them how they need to improve their teaching, and they don't want it, it's just not going to work well. So we focus on schools that not only want us, but have a school structure and a buy-in level that sets everyone up for success. So, if anyone here, I'd be happy to be challenged on it. From a research perspective, that's very biased research. We're very much filtering our work. We're kind of selecting a very niche group of participants, of subjects, if you want to talk in very literal kind of research terms. But I would argue that I'm not trying to say that Pencils of Promise teacher support program works for everyone. Is what I am trying to convey from a data perspective, is that it works really, really well for this kind of teacher, for this kind of school, for this kind of community. And there are thousands, if not millions, of those communities around the world. So, there's so many nonprofits that do education, so many nonprofits that do everything. And it was what I really like about Pencils of Promise, is that we really kind of stay in our lane. We don't try to veer out too much into, we don't work in conflict areas. We don't work in areas of unrest per our move from Nicaragua to Guatemala. We find a place where education exists, where teachers are teaching students, where teachers are showing up, where students are going to school, and we inject life and energy and resources into those areas. And that's the way our program works. Not to say that there isn't a need for other communities that don't have that infrastructure, that don't have that passion, but for us in the work that we're trying to progress, we really try to kind of stay in our lane. And through that, we do very, very detailed needs assessments on all of our work.
Okay, thank you for that. I have another question for you, CJ. Tell us more about how you partner with local communities when you're actually building the school. And building a school in any community, I mean, that's something to celebrate. And are you partnering with the ministries of education in a manner that also helps the local economy around who is building that school and involving the local community? Or do you bring in staff? How does that work regarding your partnership with the local area?
Yeah, so there's 2 great components to that, and one, because all of our in-country offices are nearly entirely staffed by nationals of those countries. So we have a staff of 125 worldwide. 17 of those are in New York. We only have 2 expatriates in all 3 countries, and both are associate and junior level positions. And so all to highlight that every leader of every country office we have is a national of those countries, and in all three places, members of communities where we actually serve. So our country directors know, the head teachers at some of these schools for decades, long before coming on at Pencils of Promise. But with that, we only source local contractors for construction needs. And so, the money raised by Pencils of Promise goes into buying materials, buying labor that is then being fed into local contractors for infrastructure. And then also within our partnership agreements with communities, there's a 20% contribution commitment from the community level. That's either in materials or labor. That fluctuates. Sometimes it's more if a community can provide more in either, and sometimes it's less. There's always exceptions made, but it's kind of a starting point of 20%. And what that 20% contribution means in so many ways is that kind of community commitment level. So we're identifying communities that are committed to education, that really want to advance their education. But then the involvement in either labor or materials is that investment. And so to a proof point, over the course of nearly 12 years and 525 schools, or I think it's 525 plus by now, built, every single one of those schools remains open and operational. From the very, very first school built in Patung, Laos, almost 12 years ago, to the most recent school that broke ground just prior to the COVID pandemic. All of it's ongoing and operational. These schools are ran and operated by the government. It's a quick handover. It's something that we provide, again, the funds to build. But then, after it's said and done, we remain engaged with the communities and ask what they need in terms of, infrastructure repairs, stopping by to say hello. If we're on the road to one school, we'll stop by at another school and just stop to check in and say hi. When programs, teacher support and WASH get offered, and there's more and more engagement there. So we're lucky enough to be small enough and be so connected with our communities and country that network will forever exist, in making sure that commitment will never pass.
Thank you. Thank you, CJ. And we have one last question from James. James, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, so my question is, in achieving your mission, has data always been a central strategy, and has the type of data collected and its use evolved since the start of the organization?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, to both points. I mean, the focus on data, our founder, who still, sits on a level on the board and has gone on to start many other organizations, knew the importance of data and storytelling from a very early point. His use of data and his definition of storytelling was probably different than mine, but it's always been a component of how we present ourselves, and pushing the envelope on innovation and use of technology and representing and visualizing data in different ways has always been critical. With anything and with any kind of turnover of different mindsets and a different set of eyes, it always helps to kind of bring in a different perspective. My predecessor did a wonderful job advancing the use of data and data collection and technology in their time. And, I think with my input and my vision, I think it's brought it to another level. And I also think this is my dream job, so I don't think I'm ever going to leave, but if I were to ever have a successor, I would guarantee that individual would advance whatever is existing now. There's always a different perspective, and we have a network of, pro bono supporters and individuals that provide a different set of eyes to our work, to where we can always make sure that we're checking ourselves and not, looking too much internally. But it's always been data centered. It's always been data forward. but far more than it was at the beginning, and probably likely far more in the next 10 years.
Okay, so on that note, again, CJ, thank you for inspiring us this evening about your phenomenal work with Pencils of Promise. We will be taking the rest of August off and resuming in September. So we hope you will come back in September. We have some exciting plans for you and organizations that will be coming in to talk with us about their use of data. So please plan to rejoin us in September. And if you have ideas for speakers or talks, please message me through the Meetup platform, meetup.com/data, meetup.com/greatergood, Elaine Gamble. And I would love to hear from you and whatever ideas you might have, speakers, both. We welcome hearing from our Meetup members. And you will also receive a brief feedback survey. So I'm asking everyone to please complete that. We love to hear your thoughts and to hear your voice. And it helps us to continue taking this to the next level. So again, our thanks to CJ, and thank you all for attending. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Elaine.